when we have lots of files that have been changed in our pull request, if we have lots of different commenters and the pull request workflow just isn't enough to manage all that feedback and all that conversation that's going on. I'm going to pull up a code review that I have in process on GitHub, and hopefully I'm kind of illustrating how it can be tough to see what's really going on here. We have lots of different comments throughout the code. There's actually 3 code files here. It's going to be difficult to tell when I'm moving from one file to another file, and that's just a limitation of, GitHub's really great for small changes, but as those changes get bigger, it can get a little bit tougher to manage what's going on with those changes. Like I said, we've actually scrolled through multiple files here, and it's tough to tell. But let me go into the same pull request in Collaborator. I'm just going to go back here, and right off the bat, we're going to see that we get a nice overview of what's going on with this pull request or with this code review. We can see the different files that have been added to this code review. We can see the lines and conversations that have been added. What types of conversations have been added? Have they been a defect? Which we'll get into later, the importance of defects and how we track those, or whether it's just a general conversation, whether those defects have been fixed, who's left defects. So we can get a nice overview of our code review very quickly, very easily, right from our review homepage. But then we can go into the file. And again, since we're not breaking up the file by putting the comments into the actual file, which admittedly can be a matter of preference, but it does make it easier to maintain the flow of the file as you're reading it. And we are tying these conversations to individual lines, so we can see here on line 118 little speech bubbles signifying that someone left a comment on line 118. And I can click the comment that was left on line 118, which is now line 119 in the new revision. But now we can see that that comment's been tied to that line, so we can have those real-time conversations right with the code. If we have distributed teams, we can make it easy to keep the conversations tied with the code.
Right.
And again, as I mentioned, tying those bugs like we see here at line 126, tying those into the code.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point that you're flagging the defect here. And when we were in GitHub just a moment ago, you had all the comments. And of course, Collaborator can do those comments as well. But really, what's the significance of the defect within the context of Collaborator?
Well, the significance is the defect implies that something needs to change before this review can be fixed. And now, we're calling it a defect, but that doesn't mean it has to be a defect. It doesn't actually have to be broken code. It could be something that, again, just needs to change. Maybe it's syntax. If you have a syntax standard within your organization and you need to follow that, you could log that as a defect, or a commenting standard, just providing an example. But the idea is something that needs to change before this review can be completed, and having that traceability of those items so we know that we found this particular item with this particular commit, which is part of this pull request, and reviewed by these people.
Right. So you have that traceability. So when you talked about reports earlier, but then you could run those reports for process improvement.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely. You could run a report on defects and say, hey, we keep on finding defects in this module. What's going on here? Should we refactor that?
Excellent.
So hopefully this gives everybody a good idea of how we can at least organize our comments and conversations and defects and files using Collaborator.